When was the last time you were attacked? In silence, not with weapons, nor with shouts, but with judging glances that know nothing, with fake smiles hiding invisible stones, with words that wound, precisely because they remain unspoken. How many times have you swallowed the pain just to keep the peace? How many times have you disguised humiliation with a slight nod, pretending not to feel, just to survive? Some wounds do not bleed, yet they remain open. Inside, the heart stays silent, but screams, the soul trembles, but no one sees. Did you try to defend yourself, or did you learn to endure in silence? To let them think what they want, while inside you, something slowly shattered. Some pains make no noise. They fall like stones, one by one, on the spirit of someone already tired of fighting against the wind, and yet they remain standing. But the Stoic does not raise their hands. They raise their soul. They do not retaliate, do not seek revenge, do not bend. They observe, they understand, they endure. Perhaps you are facing injustice. Perhaps the world is pushing you to the ground, without even giving you a chance to explain. What if this pain is not a punishment, but preparation? What if this humiliation is the soil where your strength is sprouting? What seems like the end may be the birth of a new stance. Stay with me until the end, because the story you'll hear today is not just about suffering, it's about a silent choice. The choice not to become like those who hurt you. It's about inner strength, about integrity amid chaos, about the courage not to react with hatred, even when everything in you cries out for justice. Today, we'll uncover the Stoic message behind the pain won't stop, but you will grow stronger. Lessons from a stoning. The stones were already on the ground. No one needed to command them. Before any gesture was made, judgment had already been pronounced in their hearts. This was not a trial, it was a spectacle. The dry dust, hanging in the hot air, seemed to wait silently for the moment the first condemnation would take shape. There were hardened faces, narrowed eyes, and a thirst not just for justice, but for power, for dominance, for public punishment. The crowd was ready, but the question still echoes, whose justice? At the center of the scene stood a man. He was not surrounded by soldiers, nor protected by allies. He was alone. His name was Stephen, one of the first disciples of that new path, that spoke of love in the face of hatred, surrender in the face of violence, life in the face of death. But Stephen was more than a believer. He was a man of clear conscience. He had chosen to live with integrity, even if it meant challenging the system, even if it put him on a collision course with the moral gatekeepers of the time. Before the crowd, he did not defend himself. He did not counter accusations. He did not soften his words. He knew what he had said. He knew what he believed. And he knew he was paying the price for remaining faithful to his truth. As the accusers stirred, waiting for any movement to justify their violence, Stephen remained calm. His eyes did not search for allies or escape routes. They looked to the sky, not like someone begging for desperate help, but like someone ready to accept whatever came with dignity. The tension grew. There was a moment when everything seemed to freeze, the sound of heavy breathing, the murmur of the crowd, and then it happened. The first gesture, the first tone, but the initial impact was not physical. It came from their gaze, the look of those who had once walked beside him, who had shared the same faith, now overflowing with contempt, superiority, cruelty disguised as zeal. The crowd moved. Stephen was pushed, dragged. There was no honor in how they treated him, no compassion in their actions. Every shove carried the pent-up rage of hearts that could not bear another's integrity. His body fell. He got up and fell again. Dust clung to his skin. Blood began to show. But he did not scream. He did not curse. He prayed. There, in the midst of chaos, when it would have been understandable for him to lash out, he prayed, not for himself, not for the pain he felt, but for them, for those hurting him, as if he understood that their anger was not personal. It was a reflection of something deeper. Stephen knew most. They were not stoning him, but the mirror he represented. He reflected something they could not bear to see: inner strength, courage without violence, faith without force. Blood flowed, bones began to break, but his eyes remained fixed upward. There was something in Stephen's posture that did not bend. Even on his knees, he stood tall inside. He was not begging for a miracle. He had already made peace with his fate. His miracle was different, staying pure until the end. And then, with a weak voice, he whispered one last prayer, not for justice, but for forgiveness. Lord, do not hold this sin against them, a sentence that echoed like thunder, because it carried no bitterness. It carried understanding, wisdom, spiritual maturity. There was no deliverance, no divine intervention, no spectacular ending, just silence, a motionless body on the ground, a trail of blood, and a soul that, though crushed by the world's brutality, ascended intact. And here lies the hardest lesson to grasp and perhaps the most transformative. Stephen did not win by the world's standards. He did not have the last word. He did not convince his executioners. He did not escape the sentence. But in his surrender, he manifested something few can, the inviolability of the soul. He did not lose himself. There is a strength that does not need to appear strong, a resistance that does not need to harden. Stephen did not retaliate, did not fight the inevitable, did not wish harm. He chose to remain whole, even as he was shattered. And that choice, that serene firmness, is the true victory. This is the Stoic message pulsing beneath the story. Stephen, without even knowing the writings of Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, embodied what they would call virtue in adversity. The courage not to react with hatred, the discipline to remain centered, the wisdom to understand that what happens outside us does not have to define what happens inside. Epictetus, who also knew suffering, without responding in despair, taught, "Some things are within our control, others are not. Our duty is to distinguish between the two." Stephen understood this. He could not control the crowd or the stones, but he could control his posture, his response, his integrity. Seneca would have called his attitude greatness of soul. He wrote, "The truly great man is not shaken by pain, injustice, or death. He faces them as part of nature, not to be feared, but understood." That is what we see in Stephen's final prayer. Not fear, not despair, but understanding. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, would say, "Dignity lies in keeping control of yourself, even when the world loses control." Stephen not only kept control, he transcended the moment. This is not about accepting suffering as desirable. That would be callous. It is about recognizing its inevitability and knowing that true power lies in choosing how you respond. Stephen chose to respond with courage, compassion, and silent strength, and that is stronger than any miracle, because some victories make no noise. They happen within and shape who you become forever. Stephen's death is more than a martyrdom, more than a tragic end or a religious symbol. It is the portrait of virtue amid chaos. He was not defeated, he was revealed. There, beneath stones and shouts, what truly lay inside him was laid bare: integrity, courage, and a peace that does not bend to the noise of the world. True strength is not measured when everything is in order. It shows itself when everything collapses. You remain whole. Stephen embodied what the ancient Stoics would call self. He did not seek to change events, because he knew that was beyond his power. What he could govern was himself. As Epictetus would say, "It's not what happens to you, but how you interpret it that matters." Stephen did not see the stones as enemies. He did not interpret the violence as personal injustice. He did not seek blame or demand repayment. He simply chose not to be ruled by what came from outside. His conscience was clear, his posture firm. He understood what the Stoics always taught: external suffering may reach the body, but the mind defines its true impact. That choice to not absorb the violence, to not let anger deform him, to not become a reflection of the evil he received, the greatest demonstration of inner freedom. It is when a man, even while losing everything, proves he was never in the world's hands. This is what Seneca would call, "The true good is not what happens to us, but what we do with what happens to us." Stephen did not have the best fate, but he had the best possible response. He turned pain into forgiveness, dishonor into dignity, chaos into surrender. That is virtue in its purest form, not as an idea, but as practice. And that is the essence of Stoicism: to act with excellence even when the world is in ruins. To be Stoic is not to suppress emotions, it is to elevate them, to give direction to pain, to master oneself, not to be cold, but to be free. When Stephen prays for those who stone him, he is not denying reality, he is transcending it. He chooses not to be a slave to hatred, not to be shaped by fear, not to react as others expect. He remains centered. This is the virtue of resistance, not of pride, but of maturity, not of denial, but of presence. the steady presence of one who understands that some battles are not won with a sword but with posture, as Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote. What is within your power? Your mind, and that is where you must build your fortress. Stephen had built that fortress, stone by stone, decision by decision. He knew true protection does not come from outside. It is not in circumstances. It is in the discipline of the mind, in the clarity of conscience, in the choice, repeated every day, not to betray oneself even if the world betrays you. This is the way of the wise, the strong, the just, not those who fight to change what they cannot control, but those who refine themselves to remain serene in the face of the uncontrollable. The storm may come, but if the heart is steady, nothing is lost. And Stephen, on that day, lost nothing. He surrendered whole. The Stoic understands there is a freedom greater than the physical, the freedom to remain virtuous, even when everything around invites the opposite. Stephen's body fell, but his soul remained standing. That is the lesson, that is the legacy, that is philosophy lived. And you, are you enduring your own emotional stoning? Maybe no one is throwing visible stones, but you feel the impact daily. They come disguised as indifference, as cutting words, delivered with a polite smile, as silence is too long to be neutral. You find yourself surrounded by demands, criticisms, expectations that never end. Maybe at work, you're judged not for who you are, but for what others project onto you. Maybe at home, words have lost their care and turned into spears that pierced your chest. You try to move forward, try to keep your posture, but inside, something bleeds. And no one sees. No one asks. No one acknowledges. And the worst part isn't what others do, it's what you start doing to yourself, doubting your own strength, questioning if you're wrong for being who you are, wondering in silence, do I deserve this? But breathe, pause for a moment, and ask yourself, are you living in an invisible prison, trapped in a role you didn't choose, upholding a system that suffocates you, fulfilling obligations that drain your soul? Who betrayed you, and have you yet to forgive? Is the weight of that resentment corroding the best parts of you? By staying at war with the past, have you drifted further from the peace you could still build? And the silence, does it unsettle you? The lack of answers, recognition, justice, could it actually be preparation? An invitation to discover what only silence can reveal, your true inner strength. Because it's easy to keep your composure when all is well, but it's in discomfort that the soul is shaped. When you're ignored, hurt, excluded, that's when the opportunity arises to grow beyond the ego. The Stoic does not seek external control. They do not force others to change or mold the world to their image. They seek internal mastery, the freedom to remain whole, even when everything around tries to break them. This doesn't mean accepting injustice as if you deserved it, but it means not letting injustice destroy your character, because in the end, what truly belongs to you is not what happens, it's how you choose to respond. You can come out of this stronger, but only if you stop fighting what you can't control and start cultivating what you can. Your posture, your integrity, your conscious silence. Yes, the world may remain unfair, the stones may keep falling, but they don't have to define who you are. You are not what was done to you, you are what you choose to do with it. The stones don't define you, your response does. And if right now everything feels too heavy, maybe it's because you're being refined. Maybe this pain isn't punishment, but preparation for the firmer, lighter, wiser version of yourself. So don't ask for the pain to leave before it teaches you what it came to teach. Don't wish to escape the desert before learning to walk with steadiness. And when the world's voice falls silent, may your conscience speak louder. Life won't stop testing you, but you can stop reacting as if you're always being defeated. Take a deep breath, straighten your posture, and remember, between what happens and what you feel, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom. Use it. The wise man does not choose the easiest path. He honors the path that was given to him. Stephen did not win with fiery speeches. He did not need to shout to prove his courage. He won with posture. Even surrounded by shouts, stones, and hatred, he remained standing inside, not by strength of body, but by steadfastness of soul. The pain did not stop, the stones did not cease, but something greater happened. He became larger than the pain. And you, will you let pain decide who you are? Will you allow injustice to shape your spirit? Or will you transform every wound into a brick of inner strength. Because the truth is hard but liberating. Life will not always give you justice, but it offers you something more precious. The chance to respond with nobility. The chance to use what breaks you, to build the strongest version of yourself. To be stoic is not to be cold, it is to be profound. It is to understand that external chaos does not have to create internal chaos. It is to be like Stephen Collan, steadfast, silent, but unconquerable within. If this story has ignited something inside you, if it has reminded you of a pain that still lingers, or a strength you almost forgot you had, consider following this channel. Here, every story is a silent compass, a reminder that living with an unshaken soul is possible even when everything around you seems to crumble. Because in the end, it is not the world's shouts that define you. It is the silence of your conscience. And the way you choose to walk, even under stones, even alone, even wounded, but always with integrity.